Hello and welcome to another video. And in this particular video, I'm looking to discuss my OK Corral diorama. Okay, so there are two aspects to this particular diorama and collection. The first part is regarding the Hawthorne Village building, which is this building you can see here, which is actually quite a good representation of the actual OK Corral building, if you've ever seen pictures of it. This building is located in Tombstone, Arizona, southwestern United States, and was the scene over a century ago of probably the most famous gunfight ever in Wild West history, which was, of course, the gunfight at the OK Corral. The second section of this diorama piece is the gunfight itself. So if I just pan the camera around here, and you'll be able to see the actual figures and the characters of the actual gunfight at the OK Corral. And I'll discuss those slightly in a minute, but firstly, I'll discuss the Hawthorne Village building itself. So I acquired this some time ago, a few months back now, and I actually got these few figures with it as well. Now you can see these are actually Hawthorne Village figures, and they are actually in the correct scale for the building. This guy here is Billy the Kid riding on horseback. This character here is Doc Holliday. Behind him is Morgan Earp, and that character on the horseback with a mask is Jesse James. As you can see, there is a light actually within the building. I think this is quite a cool feature for the Hawthorne Village. I think this is one of their signature trademarks, if you will. That is that you can actually fit a bulb within the building, and it does actually, when the lights are activated, you can see a light from within the building, which I think is quite cool. But for the purpose of this video now, I'm actually going to switch this light off, and we'll discuss the figures in more detail. Okay, so moving around to the actual rear of the OK Corral is the second part of this diorama collection, which is to do with the participants in the actual gunfight. Now these figures are actually from a company called Andrea Miniatures, and its subsidiary of that is Black Hawk. And these are actually Black Hawk Andrea miniature figures of the participants in the OK Corral. And I think they're great, to be honest, because the paint application on these figures, I mean, they're only about the 54 millimeters, that's roughly what, just over 5 centimeters in height. But I think the paint application, the detail on these figures is excellent, much better than the actual Hawthorne Village figures, which are over here, which are good, and they are obviously to scale with the building, but they don't have the same level of detail as these figures. So I'm very interested in Wild West history, obviously, and this, as I said, is probably one of the most, if not the most famous gunfight in the Old West, the gunfight at the OK Corral. Now this actually took place on let me get this date right, the 26th of October 1881. The gunfight itself occurred in the afternoon, about mid-afternoon, about 2:30 in the afternoon. And as I said, these were the main combatants of that gunfight. So what happened on that fateful day in October 1881? Well, there was a lot of bad blood between these three individuals, well, these four individuals here, and the cowboys. So these four individuals were essentially the three Earp brothers. So here we've got, on the far left, we've got Virgil Earp. In the center, we have Wyatt Earp himself. just kneeling down here, we have Morgan Earp. And this gentleman here is none other than John Henry Doc Holliday, very famous gunfighter of the Old West. So these were the law section of the gunfight. On the opposing side, we had what were known as the cowboys. So in the center here, we have Frank McClory. To his left is his brother Tom McClory. Towards the rear, we have Billy Clanton. And if I just bring this over here, this chap here is none other than Ike Clanton. So let me just focus that there, that's a little better. That's Ike Clanton there, next to the sign of the OK Corral. So the history is, essentially there was a stagecoach robbery in 1881 in which a stagecoach driver, I think Bud Philpott, lost his life. Now the perpetrators, the actual villains who took part in the stagecoach robbery, were well known to this particular chap here, Ike Clanton. And what White Earp did was he sought assistance from Ike to actually apprehend these stagecoach robbers. Now, the deal went badly, and the upshot is there was a lot of bad blood between Ike Clanton and White Earp. And this continued for several months in the year of 1881. A lot of threats were exchanged. And essentially, there was trouble brewing. There was going to be a fight. I think it was inevitable. And on that particular day, I think the previous night, Ike Clanton had actually issued threats to White Earp and the Earp brothers, saying how he was going to kill them, and you know there was going to be a fight. So on that day, the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday decided to wander down, I think it was Allen Street, and in a vacant lot, they met up with the cowboys here, the McClorys, Billy Clanton, and Ike Clanton. I think there were a couple of other cowboys there at the time. I think Billy the Claiborne was there as well as Wes Fuller. But Billy Claiborne and Wes Fuller, as soon as they noticed that the lawmen were coming, they hightailed out of there. But there remained the McClorys and Billy and Ike Clanton. Johnny Behan actually stopped the Earps and Holiday on their way to the vacant lot behind the OK Corral. He basically said, don't go down there. I've disarmed them, and if you go down there, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be a fight, which I think the Earps knew that anyway. There was actually a city ordinance at the time, which basically forbade anybody to carry firearms in city limits. And this essentially was the pretense or the pretext for the Earp brothers to go down there and essentially disarm the cowboys. That was their key intention. But I guess with all the bad blood that happened, there was bound to be trouble. So when the Earps finally did confront the McClorys and the Clantons, there was a big standoff. Initially, we had Virgil Earp here, who had a cane in his hand, and he essentially told the cowboys to throw up their hands and give up their guns. At which point, I think Frank McClory and Billy Clanton actually put their hands on their revolvers and they were about to draw. At which point Virgil shouted, "Hold, I don't want that." And this is where the fight really started to happen, because within a split second, Frank McClory drew his revolver, drew his firearm, and at that point, this chap in the center here, White Earp, did the same thing. And he essentially drew down on Frank McClory. And you can see here in this little diorama, Wyatt Earp is actually aiming at Frank McClory. The first shots pretty much happened instantaneously, and Frank McClory was hit in the belly from a shot by Wyatt Earp, and Frank McClory's shot hit Virgil Earp in the calf. As you can see here, he's just leaning down. Now, Doc Holliday was on the outskirts, nearest the road, and there was actually a horse that kind of partially obscured this chap here, Tom McClory. So what Holliday did was he spooked the horse, cleared the way, and then he took a clear shot at Tom McClory. And as you can see him reeling back here from a shotgun blast. Several shots were exchanged. Morgan Earp got hit in the shoulder. Obviously, as I said, Virgil got hit by Frank McClory's first bullet in the calf. Doc Holliday actually took a shot from Frank McClory as well. I think his hip was grazed by a shot. Billy Clanton at the end there, he didn't actually hit anybody. He fired about 5 or 6 shots, but each of his shots basically went wild. But I think Virgil Earp got a hit on Billy Clanton's wrist there. You can see just a bit closer there. And several shots rang out, and he was hit several times, Billy Clanton. I think he backed towards a wall and he slumped down. These two guys, obviously, were the other 2 fatalities in this gunfight, and they were working their way down to the street and they just collapsed and died. I think the final shot that killed Frank McClory was either from Doc Holliday or Morgan Earp. I think got a shot on his head. He got a headshot. So as you can see, I mean, the key thing to take away from this is that this was essentially a gun battle which took place in very close proximity. Because I think when you look at Hollywood's representations, particularly the film with the same name, Gunfight at the OK Corral, I think it massively misrepresents what actually took place, because that gunfight in the film took place over what seemed like several acres in a field somewhere. But the actual gunfight itself was in very close proximity. As you can see from this diorama here, which is quite a good representation, the combatants were very close to each other. They were only a few feet apart from each other. And the gunfight itself lasted only about 30 seconds. And I think there were about 30 shots from all combatants fired. So it was very quick. It was over very quickly. As you can see, this guy here, Ike Clanton, he actually grabbed hold of Wyatt Earp's arm and he said, "Don't shoot, I'm not healed, I'm not armed." At which point Wyatt Earp basically said, "The fighting's commenced, get to fighting or get away." And that's exactly what Ike Clanton did. He ran from the scene and he got out of there. Incidentally, Ike Clanton and Wyatt Earp were the only 2 individuals who were not harmed in this gunfight. The other combatants, obviously, the 3 cowboys over here, were killed. Doc Holliday was slightly grazed on his hip. Morgan Earp took a hit in his shoulder. Virgil Earp took a hit in his leg. And that was that. That was the end of the gunfight. But, I mean, just to go back to the figures themselves, I actually love the detail on these figures. And I think the way that the figures are posed does actually tell a story. I mean, it's quite a good diorama piece, this, really, because it does actually tell how things happened within that gunfight. So, yeah, these are the Black Hawk Andrea Miniatures OK Corral figures. They're not the cheapest, but then again, I think you get what you pay for, and they are lead figures. They're very robust and extremely well painted. So all in all, I'm very happy with this collection. Okay, thank you for watching.